Welcome. You are listening to the Cornerstone Life podcast. We hope as you listen to these conversations, you leave encouraged that God sees you and is at work in your life.
Hi, welcome to Cornerstone Life podcast. Today we're going to be talking to two people that I am privileged to call friends, Jonny and Julia Norio. We are going to start today with some fun things to get to know you guys. So this episode, we're going to have two parts, 1 and 2. So make sure that you listen to both of those. But this one, I want to talk to you guys, and I want people to know one thing about you that maybe you think that people don't know. Ooh. And I have a couple of ideas. First of all, I think you guys are really huge coffee lovers.
Yes, we love
a little too
coffee.
much, honestly.
Yeah, they love their coffee. They're kind of coffee snobs. But maybe tell us your favorite drinks.
Oh, I just get a plain latte or an Americano with just a little bit of half and half. That's my favorite.
Yeah, I'm the more weird one. My go-to probably is a espresso tonic. So espresso and a little bit of tonic water.
He'll even do like espresso and orange juice.
And orange juice, yeah. That's so good.
What?
Yeah.
I have never heard of that.
Yeah.
Espresso and orange juice.
Together. It's actually...
It's not bad.
It's not bad. I thought I would hate it, but it's pretty good. But yeah, we love coffee. We're a little too picky.
Yeah,
but
even when I started here at Cornerstone, I realized just how much everyone is passionate about coffee.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like
In
only
Kansas-
Johnny's allowed to make coffees for people.
Apparently, I don't know where this came from, but like...
He takes his time, and so because of that, it's like perfect every time.
Is it actually perfect, or is it perceived because he takes
Probably.
time?
Yeah. Yeah. We tell ourselves it's perfect.
Okay.
I'll take it.
So they love coffee. I would love for you guys to just share with the audience a little bit how you guys met.
Yeah.
And in this first episode, we're going to get to know you. In the second one, we're going to talk about ministry and some of that. But how did you guys meet, and maybe share some of your story?
Yeah. Do you want to start?
You
want
go
me to start?
ahead.
Okay, so we met. I went to a YWAM DTS in Canada, and Jonny is born and raised in Canada in a small little town.
That's why he's wearing that hat.
Yeah.
Or toque.
We call them toques.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. They call the weirdest things like garbage disposal is garburator. Like what?
There is a lot of words that are different.
And so, yeah, we met. So I went to a YWAM DTS, discipleship training school, youth with a mission, in Canada. And because he was born and raised there, he was around the base all the time, played there. And so that's where we first met. And I remember meeting you through mutual friends. And and so you were, and we didn't really think anything of it. But what's so crazy, so like after my DTS, we started hanging out a little bit more in friend groups. He would start coming around, and I always thought, I'm like, why is this guy always around us? Like, he never used to hang out with our group. Like, and I thought he was like the cool group, like, you know.
Were you interested in him at all at that point?
No.
100%. 100%. That's my side of the story.
No.
Day one, she's like, yes, please.
No. That's your side of the story.
Exactly.
Oh, wait. The first time I met you, I forgot, was at this lady's house for a missions banquet. One of his best friends just came back from a DTS in Hawaii, and then that's where we first met.
Yep.
But anyways, yeah, so we...
That's when she fell in love.
And we did...
Yeah, the first time.
That's when I first like, oh, you know, like... I don't know. A guy's giving me attention a little bit, you know. And so then we started hanging out in a group. Was like, why is this guy hanging out all the time? His family has a honey farm, and so I asked him. I said, hey, like, could you bring honey to church? And he's like, oh, I'm just in the area. I'll drop it off in 30 minutes. And I'm like, what? No. And
you weren't in the area, were you?
No, I was still at home.
I was like, no, like wasn't expecting guests. I was like, no, I'll just get it from you on church on Sunday. Like that's what I wanted to do. Just asking for honey, you know? And then all of a sudden he knocks on my door, and I felt really like weird. I'm like, what the heck? And so anyways, he gave me the honey, and he basically told me how he likes me and he wants to pursue me. And in that moment, I just felt very uncomfortable. And so I just said, okay, and then asked him to leave.
You just said the word okay. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So I literally was
Not
like,
like, okay, I'm
Wow,
agreeing.
she left you hanging.
yo, honestly.
Yeah.
So like, it was like one of those moments where it's just like, I'm like pouring my heart out. I'm like, Julia, I like you. I want to pursue you.
Yeah, he was
all
like,
this stuff. And
really
she just gives me like a,
Yeah.
okay.
But not like agreeing.
We wasn't like agreeing at all. It's just like, okay. Then like 2 seconds later, it's just like,
She shut the
you
door.
can leave.
Yeah. I asked him
Yeah, she goes,
politely
"You
to
can go."
leave. I was tired.
I was like,
I was tired.
Okay. And I just got up and left because I was like, this is so
No,
But that
awkward.
didn't stop him. It
No.
didn't
Good
stop
for
him.
you.
He, I have a lot of food allergies, and so he found out what my favorite treat was, and went to every store in Medicine Hat to find
13 different
13
grocery
different
stores.
grocery stores.
No.
So literally every grocery store in Medicine Hat.
Yeah.
To find these cookies that I wanted. And so, yeah, so he pursued me.
Wait, and so he brought the cookies to you?
Yeah, he brought the cookies to my house. So he started doing random things like that enough that I was like, okay, I'll give you a chance. And so we went on
all
our
you need.
first date.
All I need is one chance.
We went on our first date to sushi, landed me in the hospital because I ate something that I couldn't eat, and asked him to go home from the hospital many times because I was like, I don't want him to stay. I was going to call
Right.
someone else, and he didn't. And the rest kind of is history. We dated for 3 years. We're engaged for 1
Yeah.
or 11 months or something like that, and then have been married for almost 5 years.
That's crazy. It's been 5 years already.
Yeah, almost in May. Yeah.
And is there anything of that story you want to correct? No?
He was kind of a stalker. I'm just kidding.
Wow, I was really hoping you wouldn't bring that up. Every single time she tells this story, she goes, yeah, he gave off like really big stalker vibes. And I'm like, don't tell
No,
people
the
that.
heart was good, and you were so kind, and you like treated me like a queen.
I still
and,
do.
Yeah.
Well, as a mom of sons, I know how hard it is for the boys, so I have a heart for both of
Yeah.
them, but that's awesome. I love that. Okay, so how did you both first, so you've been married 5 years, how
Yeah.
did you get to know the Lord? Or what's part of your testimony of, maybe Johnny wants to start with this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a Christian home my whole life. My dad was like, I guess, did all the finances at the church, all that stuff. So like I grew up being a ministry kid basically my whole life. And then when I was really young, some family friends were hanging out, and just one of them was just like, hey, like, I mean, I don't even remember how old I was really little, but they were just like, hey, like, do you know Jesus yet? And was just like really like just preaching the gospel to me. And
And
just,
how old were you?
I don't know. I want to say probably like 5, 6.
Okay,
I think just
so
a little
little
kid.
guy,
Yeah, a
yeah.
little kid. And I was like, no, like I do. And then they were like, okay, well, we're going to pray a prayer, but that's not what it's all about. You don't pray a prayer and that's that. Like it's a relationship with Jesus and all this stuff. And so did all that, and then gave my life to the Lord. And then kind of, as I grew up, I mean, I've always done music.
Was
my whole
that
life.
when first God came real to you, though? Like the
No,
first time
when
he
God first
became-
came, like, I mean, I was little, but I really, I would say, encountered the Lord really for the first time was probably when I actually was like, okay, Lord, like I'm actually going to give you everything, was when I actually started to play more in at the YWAM base, at the House of Prayer, where I was
Like
like,
in
okay,
worship
like,
teams.
yeah, and I was like, okay, like I'm really going to dedicate my life to you, because like at that time I was like 16.
Yeah.
15, 16, when I really was like, okay, like I'm truly going to give the Lord everything. And then at that point, you know, it was 10 years of playing in the House of Prayer all the time. So that was when I like truly was like, okay, Lord, like here's absolutely everything. But before that, I mean, it was just like, you know, typical.
Yeah, it was
high
like
school thing.
childlike understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, and understand the Lord. But it wasn't until that point where I really was like, okay, God, I'm going to give you like absolutely everything.
That's cool. How about you, Julia?
Yeah, so I was a pastor's kid from the day I was born. My parents were youth pastors, and I remember giving my life to the Lord. I think I did it a lot. I just always wanted to make sure. My mom would always be like, yeah. And so I remember sitting on the couch with my mom and giving my life to Jesus. But even at like my second birthday party, I wanted a worship service. So we had some youth come over and do a worship service, and we just worshiped. And then when I was 3, I was actually at your dad's, it was like a ministry event that he was doing, and my parents were running sound, and my parents would bring me with them anywhere and everywhere. And so, and it was so fun. It wasn't just their ministry. It was like mine too.
Yeah.
And so we were just doing sound, and all of a sudden they looked over, and I have tears in my eyes, and I am looking up with my hands lifted up and speaking in tongues. And so that's where
At 3.
Wow. And so never, lost that. And really, there was so many encounters as a child. I had visions and seeing angels and there's so many of those that I had, going to prayer meetings, praying for people with cancer and them getting healed. Like, I just got to see so much as a child. And then, so I felt like at a young age, I really felt like I encountered God in a real way that I've never lost. It's just continued. And then as I got older, I did fall away from the Lord for a little bit, but it's because of those moments that I had as a child that always brought me back to Jesus. And so when I was doing my YWAM DTS, I even got closer. I got free from so many things and just got closer to Jesus and experienced him more and more. So I've been,
cool.
going for Jesus.
So you
ever
both
since.
have a passion for kids ministry.
Yeah.
And really ministry in general.
Yeah.
And it is kind of interesting how you guys came together, both having ministry background.
Yeah.
What would you say would be the pros and cons of that?
Yeah, like being in ministry.
Being in ministry, like growing up in ministry. I mean, I know I'm a ministry kid too.
Yeah.
And it is, I think people who didn't grow up that way sometimes don't totally realize, for us, I guess, all three of us, there is a different element to it that has a lot of pros.
Right.
But does have some cons that maybe other people don't experience. What would you say, was there anything that would just really stood out for you? I mean, on the positive side, you were able to go to a lot of different events and be exposed to a lot of...
go on missions trips, be a part, got to see some amazing things. I think like growing up in ministry, everyone has different experiences. For me, my parents really did it with me. They brought me everywhere. Like I said, they were just very involved, but I was involved too. Like my parents, I came into my parents' life and we just did it together rather than, vice versa. And it was beautiful. And I feel like I got to learn so much. I got to see so much. And I got to experience, I've also got to hear a ton of stories. I've got to see, I don't want to go down that road. I want to go down this road. I've seen the faithfulness of the Lord and just having that faith of and just seeing all those things. But I would say cons, it is not the easiest to do ministry, have life in ministry. One thing we were just talking about was, it never stops. It's kind of it just never stops. There's sometimes...
it is your life.
Yeah, it is our life. I wouldn't change it for the world, but it is our life. And so people, it's people. We love the people. And, Christmas Eve, we're here. Sometimes Christmas Day, it never stops. I think there can be a lot of, we have to be very, very careful on our family time too.
Yeah.
And keeping that,
sacred.
Yeah. And so, but it's just it's a blessing to be raised in ministry and to see all these things, and the pros for sure outweigh the cons.
I would agree.
And so, I'm very blessed and thankful.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I know for me, and I guess we haven't even really talked about this before, but growing up in ministry, it's sometimes your life is in a microscope as a ministry kid, and even if that's somewhat partially perceived, there's a realness to that as well,
right?
Where you're put in. And we've been conscious of that with our kids too. It's their life is, people are watching them. They're watching how they act and how they behaved. And it puts a measure of pressure
for sure
on your kids. And I think it is hard as parents to navigate that. And so growing up that way, and we're all three here sitting, living for Jesus, that's pretty amazing testimony.
Yeah, there is a stigma of pastors' kids.
Right.
And you don't want to growing up, I'm like, I don't want to be like that, but I don't want to be like this. There's like a and so it's like for sure, your life is, being watched. I remember going here with someone and then someone seeing me and then asking me like, do you know your child is doing this? And it was just late at night going to get ice cream. It's just like things like that. And their heart is good in it. They just want to protect. And that's one thing I have had, a ton of people there for me. And watching out over me. I remember when Jonny first came to the church, my dad was like, all right, if he breaks her heart, we have so many people that are going to go after
I remember that. So I show up and he does something that I'll never forget. So
tell us some of how that experience was.
So he calls me out in the middle of the service. So we had showed up years before. We had just started dating, actually.
Probably 4 months into dating.
And we came down with some friends. We did a ministry trip. We led worship here.
They stayed at my parents' house.
Yep. So
they put them in the room next to my family on purpose.
So they have a basement suite, and then that's where all the guys were at. And they're like, oh, there's not enough room for you downstairs. There's a guest room upstairs where everybody else is at. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I go upstairs. And then I come down in the morning and the guys are still downstairs. So it's just me. And I'm like, hey, and then we get to church on Sunday. We play. And then Sean's about to preach. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool. We're sitting in the front. And he goes, you know what? He goes, hey, everybody, this guy, Jonny, he's dating my daughter. He goes, Jonny, why don't you come here? And I was like, oh, my goodness. I was like, dang. Okay. So I get up, get on stage. And then there's a moment where in baseball, there's only one Canadian team in baseball from the MLB. And there's a video of where a guy from a Texas team punches a Toronto Blue Jays player in the face, and they do it in slow-mo. And they show the video in front of the church, and all he says is, he goes, this is what we do to people who treat our daughters wrong.
I have never heard this story.
Oh, I was literally on stage, and I was like, so uncomfortable, and I was like, oh my goodness,
that's so funny.
I was like, okay, awesome, cool, you really protect your kids a lot, but I was like
yeah, it took him about 3 times for my dad to give his blessing in us getting married.
Times, and on the third time he finally said yes.
We should do a whole podcast just on that process and what that was like.
That was crazy.
It's your parents' first kid getting married to, and a daughter on top of that. Yeah. So what were some things you learned from that experience, though? Just from the 3 times. I want to hear a little bit about it.
I mean, honestly, it forced me to actually because you go in the first time and you're like, oh, I'm going to ask to marry this girl, whatever. And in your brain, you're like, oh, okay. But the first time was the worst, because the first time he thought I was joking. So he just started laughing. So I went into his office before they renovated upstairs. And I go in his office, I sit down, and I'm like, hey, Sean, and I'm super nervous. I'm sweating. Mm-hmm. I was like, can I marry your daughter? And he's working on his computer, and he starts laughing. And I'm like, and he turns around, he looks at me, he goes, oh, you're actually serious? And I was like, yeah. He goes, no. I was like, okay.
He always has some conditions.
And then he gave me this long list of
things he had to do and why.
But it really did show me how, number one, because we don't have kids yet. So when we do have kids, it really did show me also how to protect your kid. And how to make sure the vetting process is actually right. Even though for both of us, 3 times of no, we were both like, what the heck? What am I doing wrong? Yeah, and she's mad because she's like, are they ever going to say yes? Yeah. What's going on?
In the time we didn't understand it. And I mean, a little bit, but not. And now it's so we're so thankful for it. And we've learned so much from it.
Well, what do you understand from it now? Hindsight.
Yeah, I understand it's the biggest decision you'll ever make.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful to have parents that cared enough that they weren't afraid to say no. And they weren't afraid to vet him and figure out who is this guy from a different country. They actually even sent my best friend to Canada to kind of, see how we live life. And so, yeah, I feel like just even that, I learned that and learned how we are to be in the future for our children. And, but yeah, just even so thankful for the conditions too. Like we weren't ready to get married yet. We were like, I was 20 maybe, maybe 21. Yeah, 20. And so we weren't ready yet. And I'm just so thankful. The timing was perfect.
Well, and your dad loved you enough to just look at some of the things. And for you as a man, it probably made you value her more. Yeah. And it's even, the price that you paid to actually be able to be in this relationship and eventually get married.
Yeah, because like I would have to come, I did it for 3 years where I came for like 2 or 3 months out of the year and just stayed with them.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, and I would just come and it would just be hanging out with family, getting to know everybody.
Yeah. And then when you live from a distance, like my parents have no idea, and then we were long distance for a little bit and we learned so much from that too. And just how to communicate and how to, like do life apart. Like distance does make your heart grow fonder. And so we were doing that for a while. And
dating culture the way it is so opposite of what you guys just described too.
Yeah.
I'm all for that, by the way.
Yeah.
But I mean, really most of just the Western dating culture, and you come from a Latin family, so that would be more common. You'd probably be more used to how her parents handled it. Maybe than your average.
I mean, I even had my dad when I was ready to tell him, like, hey, I think I want to marry her. It wasn't even like, oh, that's awesome. He goes, are you even ready?
Right.
He goes, do you even know what it means to be a man? I'm like, what? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm ready to marry. He goes, are you sure?
Yeah.
He goes, because this is going to be like the number one commitment for the rest of your life, aside from following the Lord. He goes, there's no, like... He goes, if you're going to do this the right way and you're going to do this with the Lord, he goes, there's no, you get mad and, there's no, you can't take her back. There's no return policy.
My dad even said that. There's no return policy.
They were both very adamant in that. They go, if you're going to do this, there's no return policy. Yeah. They go, it doesn't matter.
Right.
They go, this is life. Like, he goes, it's time to be a man. Like, don't be a baby. If you're going to say yes to this, then this is the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so, even though like all my friends were getting engaged and married and I kind of felt like, I'm like, okay, I have a boyfriend. Like, why can't we get, married and engaged? And I'm just so thankful though for that time. Like, now looking back, seeing that the waiting was for sure worth it. Even though I would cry tears in my bed, like, why are my parents saying yes? Like, I did not want to go against that. I wanted the blessing. I knew how important the blessing was.
Like, it was so important that when I asked her, the first thing that comes out of her
You're
mouth
talking
is
the third time.
Yeah,
like the real time.
Like the actual time when
I actually proposed to Julia, it wasn't even like I literally get on one knee, this moment, like her best friend's involved in this whole thing. It's a full day event. And then I get to this one moment and I'm like, okay, this is it. And I'm like, Julia, will you marry me? And she just looks at me and she goes, did you ask my dad? I'm like,
and then I was
wouldn't be here.
And then I looked to my best friend and was like, are you sure he asked my dad? Like, cause we were like always like, maybe we should just get married. And I just did, but I didn't want to. And, I mean, I did want to get married, but I didn't want to without their blessing. And so,
well, good for you guys though.
Yeah.
Like honestly, getting the blessing of the parents, I think that's one of the major things that's missing in our culture today when it comes to relational success,
right?
And even success in marriage, like. And a lot of people don't have parents that are even caring or paying attention or anything. Yeah. So honestly, you guys are really blessed.
Yeah.
But that's really awesome. I think even for us, because we have kids that are going through this right now, and it's like is countercultural to do that.
Right.
Like most kids right now are dating, and they just go tell their parents. They're like, we're getting married.
Right.
Like, could you imagine that? How is this going to change the way you guys parent your kids?
I'm going to make sure.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Especially once we have like a daughter. I'm like, good luck. Like,
that's funny.
I mean, it's a big decision. I've seen, people, I don't have the easiest life marrying people that maybe, and I know everything, God restores everything and it all works out. But, it's so important. And I see, like even like friends that are in the process, I'm like, okay, if their parents aren't as involved, I'm like, you still ask the dad to, I'm really, really trying to push that and bring that back.
There's a level to it, especially like as a man. And this is something that I talked with you, even Antonio, about too, when we were dating. And I was even telling him like, hey, like I want to marry this girl. And he was like, there's a level of respect that comes with it too as a man to go to a father to go, hey, like, I want your daughter to be with me because there's a transfer of like covering that goes because it's no longer with her with daddy anymore. It's her with me. And there's such a price to be paid through that too, because now it's like, not only is she just my wife, it's like, she's my responsibility. It's like, it's on
that's
me.
Weighty.
It's heavy to know that if anything ever happens to her, I'm like, that's me. This is my fault. This is, if anything would ever happen, I'm like, it's not on anybody.
Yeah.
It's my responsibility. And then like, even like thinking of like starting a family and whatever, it's like, that's even like, it gets even heavier as a guy. Cause you're like, okay, not only is it my wife, it's my kids. It's like, it's my family. There's such a level of responsibility that comes with it that I think truly is forgotten, that guys nowadays are like, oh, I'm just going to get married and whatever. It's like, well, no, there's such a high level of like responsibility of not necessarily like pressure, but like, it's just like, there's so
it's
much
a healthy
to it.
Pressure in a sense. Like I've always thought about it like men walk straighter with a weight on their shoulders. And that's the truth, right?
Yeah.
When they have responsibility, they actually walk straighter. They think clearer. And I think it's amazing that you guys were actually privileged to go through the process. I know it's not very great when you're in it.
Right. I just remembered the stories of other people and other families, like even stories you told me. I was like, okay, it's going to be okay. But I think in like both ways, even his parents would tell me and ask me things. And, tell me things. And they were like, in my mind, just long lectures, but I still remember what they said and and it being, so important. And
well, you really do leave your father and mother and cling. And, even going back to what you just said about the covering, it's like people forget that from a biblical standpoint, like our covering is our parents.
Right.
And then we go from that to another covering, right? It's like we're never supposed to be just exposed.
Yeah.
And there's safety in that.
Right. Yeah. He even asked my dad to even take me out on a date. I don't know if that was your idea. I think it was Antonio's idea.
No, I was.
Really?
It really was
so.
because like I was gonna take you on a date, and Antonio was like, if you're gonna do that, you need to call her dad. You have to call her dad.
Yeah. That's what we tell our boys.
Yeah, no. It's
to
almost
even
like
do a date, you have to do that.
Yeah.
What? I was like, okay. And then I called, but then I took her on a date, and the first thing Antonio says to me is not even like, hey, how would it go? He goes, did you call? I'm like, yeah. How'd it go? I was nervous. He goes, but you did it? Yeah. He goes, okay, good.
Yeah. It's important to have, I feel like, not just your parents, especially in that season, but have other people around you that can speak into your life and to like in a lot of my friends too that are still in this season, I'm like, no, get other people around you. It's so important. It's so important every season of life, but to have more
perspectives and people that you trust speaking into things. And
so
I mean,
true.
even if you're listening and you don't have, the privilege or blessing of like godly family or parents that even care. I mean, sadly, there's been people that we've mentored and their parents don't. And I think part of it is the parents don't even know that they can.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that voice, find some mentors.
Right.
Find a couple that's even 5 to 10 years ahead of you that's doing it well.
Yeah.
That could speak into it, maybe even 2 or 3.
Right.
Because, man, relationships are difficult and people see things that you don't see.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And a lot of times I think we will think, oh, well, that couple doesn't have time, or that they're so busy. They have like 5 million kids or whatever. But it's like truly people love to do that. I mean, I've never met anybody that's like, no, I don't have time for, to pour in or to your life or pray with you or, and so people, like one thing I wish I could tell myself your
younger self.
Yeah, my younger self is that, hey, they want to be a part of your life. They want to minister. They think you don't want it,
Right.
I wish I could tell myself but it is so important to have mentors and people in your life and not to do it alone.
I know for us too, even we've been married 26 years, so we're further into it. The best seasons of marriage that we had were based on the decisions to get godly counsel from people in various seasons of our life, even as we encountered things. And I think if you can start that pattern early on, and dating is like, and I guess part of this podcast is becoming about dating, but your guys' story is really a testimony because you did submit and when you honored parents, both directions, you also got the blessing of the Lord on your relationship.
Yeah. And it was so beautiful. Like even just seeing how our life panned out, we got married here in Kansas City, and then we immediately moved to Canada, and that was hard too of me. I was so close to my family to leave my family. I cried almost every night.
Yeah, she did.
Really?
Honestly.
For how long?
Until we moved back.
They moved back.
No.
So
It was
We were
hard.
in Canada for 6 months, 7 months?
6 months because our apartment lease got up in 6 months.
That's right. Yeah. So pretty much for 6 months, it was Julia crying and
Not every night.
well, not
but
every night, but it wasn't
maybe
like
almost.
crying, like sobbing. She would just get sad and she'd be like, I miss my family
Sometimes
and this and that. And
Yeah. It was a little hard because I was so close with my family. And I think when I got married, there was definitely a shift mentally. Obviously, there was a shift everywhere, but I was really like, oh no, I'm leaving my father and mother, and there wasn't that covering. Yeah,
It's a huge transition.
It's huge, and so moving to another country, even though I've lived there before, it was just like, oh man, this is it.
Well, and even for women, I think men don't understand this sometimes. It's like, it's a vulnerable position that you're in, and to put yourself under another man that's basically your same age and has no life experience, it's like, sometimes I think men don't realize that it's a feeling of like, wow, am I safe in this? So that's another reason why I think parents are really, really important and key in that process.
Yes. I was thankful that his parents were around in our amazing community. And if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be obviously in Canada. And so, but yeah, that was hard, but I was really, it's cool how it all turned out. And then 6 months later, moving back here to Kansas City.
And you guys have been married 5 years. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That does not seem like
it's crazy.
Yeah,
it goes so fast. People tell me it went fast, but I'm like, oh my gosh.
It really does, doesn't it?
It goes so fast. I was like, it doesn't go fast. I mean, the first year seemed really long.
Okay.
I think a lot of marriages have that.
To preface that, like we got married and then we moved to Canada. We moved back to America, and then it was like COVID hit.
Right.
And then, and then
That's
the
just
world
hard for
shuts
everyone.
down. So then it's just like, what do we do?
Yeah.
Like,
That's true. I forgot about that.
it's like
Our first year anniversary, we couldn't do anything. So we went in the car and had a charcuterie board in the car, and we went
to a park.
We went to the place where they took our wedding photos, and we took a photo because
that's
we couldn't
right,
go
we
anywhere
did.
inside. It was like major.
Yeah, I remember
still
that.
shut down. I think we got sushi to go or something.
And really, you guys started off in ministry right away.
Yeah.
Really serving a lot too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like we were volunteering at the YWAM base, and I felt like we were busy doing something all the time. Went on a couple of ministry trips, and that was a lot of fun. Pretty much right after we got back from our honeymoon. And
And then when you moved here, you're full-time kids ministry.
Yeah.
Which,
Full-time.
we should maybe end the podcast right there, because the second episode we're going to talk about ministry, and we'd love to hear your guys' heart on that.
Yeah.
On what it looks like to be a ministry, especially as a young married couple, because I think there's a lot of young couples that want to pursue that.
Right. Yeah.
So, thanks for listening. Tune into the second episode. We're going to be talking about ministry and what it looks like for a young couple and family to be in ministry.
Thank you for listening to the Cornerstone Life podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we would love to meet you. Join us any Sunday at 10 a.m. at Cornerstone Church in Blue Springs. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, and share. See you next time.